Okay, so we're on.
Yes.
And my name is Elizabeth, originally Elizabeth Wheatfield. I came from Altoona, Pennsylvania. I had a sister who is no longer Phyllis and Ella Louise. I am very close to Ella Louise, who is the older, but not as close to Phyllis May. I moved to Quarryville in Lancaster County in 1944 to teach at the local high school. I met many people there. Eventually, I was able or managed to find a man to marry, James Austin Ferguson. We have one daughter, Phyllis Ferguson, who later married a Pifer, and his name is Darwin. They have one child, and the child's name is Derek. Derek is now 7 years old and in second grade at school. I get to see them quite often since I live here at Willow Valley, and they come over and get me and take me back over. And that's about all I have to tell you. Bye-bye.
Tell me about when you grew up in Altoona. What were some of your recreation activities? Where did you go?
Well, when I grew up in Altoona, we didn't have too many recreations. You must remember that it was a very large city. It wasn't a little place like Quarryville, much larger than Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I lived on 15th Avenue and 23rd Street, and I went to school at 6th Avenue and 17th Street. So now that is high school, that is not grade school. So you know that I had a little jog every morning and back. When I went to grade school, which is up to the 7th grade, I only had 4 blocks to walk to grade school. Then I went over to Roosevelt Junior High School, which was clear across town. And then the high school was right 1 block just from the junior high school. And then I went to Juniata College for 3 years. In the meantime, I went summers to take the place of the 4th year. We rode the train every day. We walked 1 mile to the station, got on the train, rode for 45 minutes, got off the train, walked 1 mile up to campus, went to school, and reversed our tour in the evening and came back home sometimes at 10 o'clock. And then it was another mile back home and then study. So college wasn't a lot of fun. We never had, in fact, we went to a college that never had proms and whatnot. It was a Brethren school.
What year did you attend college?
I went to college. I graduated from high school in 1932, and I was out of school a year. There wasn't much money around in those days. And then I went to college from 33 and graduated in 37. Then I went up to Penn State. I started up there in 44 to get my master's degree. But by then I was living in Lancaster, and I went up to the campus on Sunday night and lived in a rooming house through the week and went back down. I went George Bollinger, who at that point lived down in Littleburn Township, rode with me.
When you went to college, what did you study?
I had a degree in music education. Why I took music education, I will never tell you, but I did, and that's what I taught. How well I taught it, I don't know, but we seemed to have a lot of fun at Quarryville, and I had mixed chorus and girls' glee club, boys' chorus, 7th and 8th grade chorus, and for some years I had the school in I'm trying to think of the name, Christiana, and also in Quarryville. I was in Quarryville 3 days and over in Christiana 2 days, commuted back and forth. Then Quarryville became larger and took in several areas there, and I was hired full-time at Quarryville, and there I stayed until I managed to grab my husband, who owned and operated Ferguson Motors in Quarryville.
What year did you get married?
I got married in 1953, and my daughter was born in 1955. My daughter now lives in York, Pennsylvania, and is married to Darwin Pifer and has 1 son, Derek.
Tell me about your parents. What were their names and what's their birth dates?
You would ask me that, wouldn't you? My mother's name was Bessie Ream, capital R-H-E-A-M. She came from the Lewistown, Pennsylvania area. My father's name was Frank Lemon Wheatfield. He came from Carlisle. They met at Harrisburg. They both worked at the state hospital in Harrisburg years and years back, and were married. And eventually he went to Altoona to work.
What did he work at Altoona?
Where do you think that he worked in Altoona? Why, he worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad Company, which is where everyone in Altoona worked, until they kind of went defunct back here some years ago, and I really don't know what the people in Altoona do for a living today, because I have no connection.
Was he a train conductor or worked on?
No. He worked in a machine shop.
Okay. And what did your mother do? How did she find your father?
Well, I said they both worked at the Harrisburg State Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Now, neither one of them were registered nurses.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I guess you would call them LPNs. I don't know what you would call them. I worked there too, and I certainly wasn't a nurse. But in those days, they hired people who were not registered nurses.
Okay. And
next,
grandparents. What do you know about grandparents?
Well, my father's mother was Jenny Miller. I know nothing at all about her husband. Where my father got the name Wheatfield, so there had to be a Wheatfield someplace along the line, but my uncle's name was Miller, so I don't know why father was a Wheatfield and his brother was a Miller. My mother's people were Reams, spelled capital R-H-E-A-M, and they were Pennsylvania Dutch ancestry. Next.
Religion. If they were Pennsylvania Dutch ancestry, do you consider yourself Pennsylvania Dutch?
I certainly do not consider myself a Pennsylvania Dutch. I consider myself a mixture of everything. Many people, when I was in high school, I was asked if I was part Chinese. I don't know why. I was also asked if I was Indian. I was always connected to the Indians for some reason or other. My father had attended Carlisle Indian School, and perhaps they thought he was Indian because we had Indian people visit us when we lived in Altoona. However, my father was not, because I specifically asked that question one time when I was in Carlisle. Next.
Faith. How do you feel about social justice?
I was born, yes, of course, I guess I was born, wasn't I? I was raised a Baptist. I joined the First Baptist Church in Altoona when I was 12 and remained a Baptist until I moved to Quarryville. And for 3 years, I attended the Methodist Church in Quarryville, but never moved my letter down. Then I went to Little Britain Presbyterian Church as choir director and had my letter transferred down there. Then when I married my husband, I had it moved into the Reformed Church in Quarryville, to which I still belong and where I go on Sundays. Next.
Tell me about your politics. Were you always a Democrat?
No, I'm not sorry to say. I will say that I was always a Republican until I married my husband. And when he decided to run for mayor, and a little bit before that, I decided that I guess we'd all better be on one side. So I changed my political party to the Democratic Party.
And how do you identify today?
I'm still a registered Democrat. I vote as I please in the main election. In the first election, I must vote Democratic, but then I can do as I please.
Tell me what motivated you to stay single for so long, at a time when more women...
Isn't that quite obvious? It would seem to me if you're single for so long, you didn't find anybody that you wanted to marry. However, I did go with a gentleman for 3 years. Started when we were in college, and we went together for 3 years, but he was of a different faith than I, and his mother eventually called me and said that she thought it was better if he broke off our friendship or what have you, and he eventually did marry someone of his own faith, but he has been dead for many years. Next.
Tell me about your travels over your lifespan. What's one of the most interesting places you've been to?
Well, I would say I presume. We went across the pond in '87 and visited the countries there. I went with my niece, my two nieces, one from the Washington, D.C. area and one from the Quarryville area. Prior to that, when I still lived in Alton, I had taken a trip west. I enjoyed both of them. I can't say that one was more liked than the other. We always took a vacation, my husband and I and Phyllis. We always went somewhere. So I haven't been all around the world, but I have been abroad.
Where did you go on your family vacations with Phyllis and Jim?
When I was growing up,
mm-hmm.
we always went camping because that was the thing to do in those days. And we would pick a couple of places and pitch our tents and be there for a week and then come back home.
Are you saying you did that with Phyllis and Jim?
No. No, as I was growing up.
Oh, okay.
No, my husband was not a camper by a long shot. No, we never did anything like that.
If you went away with Phyllis and Jim, what type of places did you go to?
Usually, as she got older, we went to the shore
mm-hmm.
for a week.
Like Ocean City, Maryland?
Yes, yeah, Ocean City, Maryland. Then eventually we started to go to Ocean City, New Jersey, because he had cousins living there. So we ended up mostly there. Since then, I started to go to Cape May, but I haven't been to the shore now, except during the summer with Phyllis.
Mm-hmm.
I go with her, and that's to Cape May.
You told me that you traveled west. What does that mean?
We went to Texas. I went to Texas with my mother when I was young to visit friends there, and then I myself had friends in California later. Now this is much later, when I was still teaching in Altoona, in the Altoona area, and I went out there to visit Kansas and on out.
Tell me about your most influential teacher when you were growing up that may have motivated you to consider that as a profession.
Well, I can't honestly say that any one teacher ever motivated me to be a teacher. It was the thing to do, I guess, to go to college. We could go for practically nothing. I remember my tuition was $80 a month. We got up, as I said, on the train and packed our lunches lots of times. But we got an education. How it would compare to an education today, I'm sure it wouldn't. But we all managed to get jobs, and we worked for $80 a month when we started. When I quit, I was getting the whole way $1,200. So you can imagine what it is today. What is it, by the way?
An annual salary for a teacher might be somewhere, I think Solanco is between $36,000 and $56,000 a year.
But then I quit, you see.
Did you have to quit when you had your daughter? Like in some professions?
No. I told my husband that if I got married, if and when I ever get married, I did not care to work. And so I didn't.
I remember that you were my teacher in some classes, though. You did part-time once in a while, or substitutes.
Yeah, after I was finished.
Okay.
Not very often, but sometimes.
I can still remember you blowing a whistle for gym class to junior high school kids.
Oh, yeah, since you said that, I can picture the gym. I can picture the building. And I had a whistle.
That's the first year that Swift Junior High opened.
And I'm thinking of down below.
Mm-hmm. Oh, at
in the
Quarryville.
old high school.
Okay.
Having gym classes down there.
So you were multi-talented. You did music.
Oh, I was very, very talented in most any field at all. You name it, I just couldn't do it, excepting I was no good in art at all.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about some of your friends. Who were your most consistent friends over the years, like from Quarryville? I know you talk about Helen and a couple other ones every once in a while.
Well, when I lived in Altoona, and not until I went to college, I had a girlfriend whose name was Lily Margaret O'Friel, and she married a Welsh. And we remained friends for years and years. She just passed away here. It would now be about a year and a half ago since Lily Margaret passed away. She never left the area. She taught in the Altoona school system, and she and her husband eventually moved to Hollidaysburg, and he is still living there. I guess that's about it.
In Quarryville, when you were teaching, though, did you live in a single apartment or something?
No, I lived with my mother in what was then Steckler's Apartments. It's South Church and what? State Street. Was a store on the first floor. Was a store, and there was an apartment on the second floor. We had a living room and 2 bedrooms and bath and a kitchen and a back porch. And then there was an apartment above that in which another teacher lived, Mr. and Mrs. Dunlap. Then, when I grabbed the husband, I moved up next door to the Reformed Church in Quarryville.
And did your mother continue to live in that apartment then?
My mother continued to live there in the apartment for a little while, and then she moved up with a family by the name of Geigers, in which she just had a large, I will say, kitchen and living room combined, and 2 bedrooms and bath upstairs.
Okay. What do you think is your secret to your happy life and your longevity?
Oh, deed, I wouldn't know. My father died very young in life. He was only 50. My mother lived to be in her 90s. Maybe I take after her. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too bullheaded to die. Who knows?
So tell me why you think you're such a magnet for these youngsters that keep showing up at your doorstep frequently.
Huh?
I said...
You're talking about my Thomas Tucker that comes to visit me.
I know that you have more than one.
My little Thomas Tucker was a neighbor of mine, and I don't know why. Maybe because I feed them or something. I don't know when they come. Maybe that's why they come.
Tell me, over time you've had a lot of pets, and I think that Phyllis had a little pony or something. Where did you keep all of them?
When I was young, we had an English bulldog for years. Everybody in the neighborhood was afraid of him. The man next door said, "I'll knock his goddamn head off. He's so ugly." And my mother said, "Well, that's something you don't have to knock off." Then when I moved down to Quarryville, of course I didn't have any pets for a while, and then we did get another dog, Nina. And after Nina died, we didn't have any after that. Phyllis had a pony for a while.
She took riding lessons
and
somewhere.
She took riding lessons from Jill Hassler. I guess her name was Hassler. Yeah.
Is that where you boarded the pony, over at Hassler's?
Yeah, up at their farm. George A. Smith, at that time it was George A. Smith's farm.
Oh, okay.
She got a horse then after she moved over to York and was married, but realized that she didn't have time to ride every day, and it was quite expensive boarding and having somebody feed, so she got rid of the horse.
Tell me about your connection to the Quarryville Groundhog Lodge.
Well, my husband was a groundhogger and had been a member for quite some years. We went to the functions down there. It's a fun organization. You go down, you have a lot of fun, and then in February they dress up with their white shirts or white gowns, I guess I should say, and their top hats, and parade around town or do their thing. It's just a fun organization.
What other social organizations?
It's still living. I guess it's still in existence.
Yes,
I don't know.
It's existing. Tell me about other organizations you were a member of.
Well, the only other
BPW.
The only other organization besides the Music Educators Association and the NEA which didn't amount to too much. It was the Business and Professional Women's Club, to which I belonged for as long as it was active in Lancaster. And there are still 10 of us get together once a month to have lunch, which is this coming Monday. We take turns picking the place, and we meet and eat and talk about whatever we want to, and meet again next month.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm thinking of some other things.
Well, now then, I left when I came to Quarryville. When I was living in Altoona, I belonged to the First Baptist Church. When I moved to Quarryville, I belonged to the Methodist Church. Then I went to the Little Britain Church as their choir director, and I stayed there until I married my husband, and then I moved over. I think I did tell you that.
Right, I have that. Tell me about some of the interesting characters you remember from the Quarryville Society.
Well, now, I just don't think it's very nice of me to discuss people like that in Quarryville. I liked the people with whom I associated. I can't really say there was anyone in Quarryville that I had an aversion to.
Tell me about your open door policy in your house when you lived in Quarryville.
What do you mean?
You always had an open door, and everybody would just
anybody
come.
could come and go as they pleased, and they entered the house, and they were told if they wanted anything to eat, go get it. I wasn't about to be serving.
But your door was always open when we were wandering around and needed somebody to listen to.
Yes, I always welcome people into my home, and I think that you should. There are those who don't, people, even here, probably wouldn't appreciate people just walking in. I don't know, but I have never been that way. You can't have friends if you yourself are not friendly. Next.
I think that's about it.
That's what I think. Now let me hear it.
Well, give me a parting comment. What if you have to leave something with posterity? What kind of statement would you like to leave us with?
Oh my goodness me, I don't know. Live your life the best you can, I guess, and have some fun along the way. Would be about my...
All right. That's wonderful. This is November 23rd, 2001 at Willow Valley.